I've been thinking about Mars for as long as I can remember, longer than Tesla, longer than SpaceX as a company, longer than people thought it was reasonable or sane. And when I talk about Mars being green one day, I don't mean it as poetry, I mean it as a long-term engineering outcome. Because everything that looks like science fiction at first eventually just becomes logistics, timelines, energy budgets, and stubborn optimism. And I remember sitting there, looking at the red planet, and realizing it's not dead. It's just waiting. Waiting for heat, waiting for pressure, waiting for life to show up and refuse to quit, just like life did on Earth, and people online laugh or argue or make memes when I say this, but that's fine. Because every big idea looks ridiculous before it looks obvious. And the idea isn't that we arrive and magically terraform Mars overnight. It's that we start with a foothold, a city, then two, then a network of self-sustaining habitats powered by solar, nuclear, ingenuity, and a willingness to fail and keep going. And from there, the atmosphere thickens slowly. The poles release trapped CO2. Engineered microbes begin doing what biology has always done, converting hostile environments into livable ones. And over decades and centuries, Mars shifts from red to brown to hints of green. Not forests at first, but mosses, algae, resilient plants that don't care about comfort. And when I imagine that future, I don't see a flag or a single person taking credit. I see a civilization proving it's not fragile, proving that consciousness doesn't have to be limited to one planet with one set of risks. And yes, people react strongly because Mars forces us to confront scale and patience, and the idea that our lives are chapters in a much longer story. And when I talk about my vision, I'm not claiming certainty, I'm claiming direction, because the alternative is to stay put, to argue endlessly, to let fear dress itself up as practicality. And I don't believe that's who we are. I believe humans are explorers even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. And if one day someone stands on Mars, looks out over land that's no longer barren, sees green spreading where nothing once lived, and knows that it started with a crazy idea and a few rockets that kept exploding until they didn't, and then all the skepticism, all the jokes, all the online reactions will just be noise fading into history, and the planet will be alive and will have proven that the future is something you build, not something you wait for. And when I think about what comes after that first green, that first undeniable sign that Mars isn't just a destination but a home, I think about responsibility, because creating life anywhere is a serious thing. And people assume my focus is only on rockets or timelines or headlines, but the deeper question is always sustainability. Can a civilization survive its own success? Can it learn faster than it destroys? And Mars becomes the test case for that. A place where every mistake is obvious and every success is earned, where you can't outsource consequences or pretend systems will magically fix themselves. And I imagine children born there who don't think of Earth as the default, who grow up looking at a smaller blue dot in the sky and feeling connected to it but not dependent on it. And those kids will ask why we waited so long, why we ever believed one planet was enough. And I think about the early settlers, not as heroes in movies, but as engineers, doctors, farmers, teachers, people who wake up every day knowing that their work literally keeps everyone alive. And that kind of clarity changes culture. It strips away nonsense And when people online react emotionally, it tells me the idea is doing its job, because it's forcing a conversation about long-term thinking in a world optimized for short-term reactions. And yes, there will be failures, there will be ships that don't make it, experiments that collapse, plans that look perfect on paper and fall apart in reality. But progress has always been a stack of correct mistakes, not a straight line. And Mars doesn't care about our opinions, it only responds to physics and effort. And that's comforting in a way, because it means the rules are fair. And as the planet slowly changes, as habitats expand and energy grids stabilize and local industry replaces constant resupply from Earth, Mars stops being fragile and starts being resilient. And at that point, it's not just about survival anymore, it's about meaning, art, culture, philosophy, people writing music inspired by dust storms and thin skies, people arguing about politics under a dome while knowing exactly how thin the margin for error really is. And eventually, when Mars is visibly greener from orbit, when it's no longer just red and dead, but alive in its own unique way, the story won't be about me or SpaceX or any single company. It will be about a species that decided extinction wasn't acceptable, that boredom wasn't acceptable, that the future was worth investing in, even if the payoff came long after we were gone. And that's the part that matters most to me. Not prediction, but participation. Not certainty, but commitment. Because making Mars green isn't about escaping Earth. It's about proving we're capable of creating life, protecting life, and carrying it forward into a universe that's been waiting a very long time for someone to show up and try. And when people ask me why I keep coming back to this idea, why I talk about Mars, even when the world feels like it's on fire with problems right here, I tell them that the two things are connected, because a civilization that can't imagine a future bigger than its current crisis is already in trouble, and Mars forces us to zoom out, to think in centuries instead of news cycles. And I picture that moment when the first truly self-sufficient Martian city stops thinking of Earth as mission control and starts thinking of it as a partner. When supply ships become optional instead of essential. When local manufacturing, local food, local governance emerge naturally because they have to. And that's when Mars becomes real, not a project, but a place. And I imagine standing there knowing that everything around me exists because people chose to act instead of debate forever. And the reactions online, the skepticism, the fear, the enthusiasm, they're all part of the same signal, because it means people are still capable of being shaken out of complacency. And I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I never have, but I do expect people to at least consider that the future doesn't arrive fully formed. It's assembled piece by piece by people willing to look unreasonable for a long time. And when Mars eventually shows green, not just in isolated pockets, but across regions, when its climate is still harsh but no longer hostile to life, it will stand as evidence that intelligence can be constructive, not just extractive, that technology doesn't have to end in collapse. And I think about how that changes our relationship with Earth too. Because once you've had to build a biosphere from scratch, you gain a deep respect for the one you were given for free. And maybe that's the quiet benefit no one talks about. That by learning how to make Mars livable, we relearn how to take care of home. And the story keeps going beyond Mars to moons and asteroids and places we haven't even named yet. not because we're running away, but because exploration is a fundamental expression of life itself. And one day when someone looks back and reads about these early conversations, these bold statements that sparked arguments and jokes and disbelief, they won't judge them by how controversial they sounded. They'll judge them by what followed, by whether we acted on them. And if Mars is green by then, even partially, even imperfectly, it will mean we chose hope with effort over comfort with stagnation, and that choice, more than any prediction, is the real legacy I care about.